Good evening, hello, and welcome to another Our Bookshop interview. We've got the wonderful Dominic Holland sitting. I always point to the side that he's on my screen, but actually it's always the other way around. So if I point that way, how do you?
I'll do that.
Actually, what I've always wanted to do, actually, Dom, is at some point is say, do you want a cup of tea? And do a kind of passing across, and then obviously you have somebody who.
Yes, that would be good.
How good would that be?
You'd have to do that with someone far more organized than me.
I suspect you're right.
If you did that with me, it would not work. It'd be a laudable intention, but it would not come off.
But surely you've got Nikki at your end who would perhaps knock you into shape and have it.
Well, she hasn't managed to do so over 25 years, so so she probably no. I've done a few of these, and normally my internet connection goes down, and normally I'm downstairs now, and I believe the server is through this room here, so it should be fine. So we should.
You're close to your router. I'll tell you what I do. I always plug in the actual router into my laptop, so it's you get the ultimate speed.
You see, I didn't know you could do that.
Maybe we should have had this chat before audiences and we started recording, but it's all right. It's all good. So as a gist, we're going to be talking about this rather wonderful little. I was going to call it a tome, but actually it's an incredibly digestible little piece, which I've read in a couple of sittings.
Yes.
Very charming. So let's digress on to where this book came from.
Well, as you know, Ben, I am a stand-up comedian, so I make people laugh out loud, and it's very easy for me to do that on stage. I can go on stage at your place in Tring or the Comedy Store in the West End, and I can basically make people laugh out loud. Okay, and I do that for as long as I'm on stage, and it's a lovely thing to be able to do. Much more difficult to do it as a writer. So when you write comedy, I mean, I've written a blog now for 15 years. It's much more difficult to make people physically laugh out loud. Really, the most you can do is smile and occasionally get them to laugh. So my blog is really an extension of my stand-up. And I publish one every Sunday for donkey's years. And because I'm so practiced at writing them, and I can use anecdotes from my life or observations I make about my life, it felt in lockdown like a very obvious thing to do. I'm not very good with no gigs. I like to have things to do. I like to punctuate my week with stuff, places I've got to be, gigs I've got to do, either in a suit or a pair of jeans. So when that was all taken away from me, I thought, well, I should do something with my time. And I've always wanted to do something, not just a compendium of blogs. I wanted it to be new. So there's deliberately 31 of them, and I reckon 20 of them have never been published before. I wrote them specifically for the book. And what they're supposed to be, if there's a review that's just been put online, it's like watching Dominic Holland do stand-up. And there's a cadence to my writing, and I'm very specific about my use of language and wording. I put odd bits of grammar in to tell the audience to beat here and stop here and pause here. And they're supposed to be comic vignettes on my life, Ben. And they're in fact not just my life, but the reader's life, because I'm very accessible as a commentator. So taking the mickey out of myself is really, it's supposed to be, when you read them, that you're laughing at yourself. And I really enjoyed putting it together. And I wanted it to be digestible. I wanted it to be very accessible. And I sort of wrote it with the idea that you'd read them one a day over January, which is 31 days in January, because I published it in December last year. So that was my plan, and you can be the verdict. You can be the judge, Ben. You've read it.
It's lovely. No, I really enjoyed it. It's good. And you positioned it as a piece that would sit in the toilet.
Well, when you go to people's houses, there's always an eclectic collection of reading material in the loo, and there'd be odd magazines or compendiums and that sort of stuff. So I definitely see it in that location. Although most people who've written to me about the book tell me that they read one per night. They read it in bed as the last thing to do before they go to sleep. and that's quite flattering to me. I like the idea of going to bed with all these people.
Yeah, I think there is a huge importance to removing your head from a screen and actually reading for a bit. So actually, in many ways, that's a very nice approach to it. I think,
Yeah.
and that's come from mental health people and all sorts, saying the importance of turning your brain off from everything else, and a bit of reading, whether it be 5 minutes or 30 minutes.
Well, the perfect thing is they are very short. So the longest of them is probably 1,500 words. Now, I've just written a novel, just finished writing a novel. It's 85,000 words. But even in my novels, I make the chapters very short. I don't write unwieldy chapters. I think you've got to punctuate your book and make it as easy to read for people. And that involves having digestible chunks of prose and leaving them on a cliffhanger so they want to come back to the book. But Takes On Life is specifically designed to that process of just having one per evening. And I've had a great reaction to it. People who've taken the time to read it have been very kind. I got emails from all over the world, and it seems to be not just British people. You can be in Brazil or Germany or New Zealand, and humanity is universal, and whether you're teaching your kids to swim or it's just wherever you are in the world, my stuff, it crosses over, which is good. It means I've got a big audience.
Yes, the stories are very relevant. Now, you say 20 of them are fresh, but the 11 of them you've obviously used from your blog. Which ones were? I mean, that must have been a hard task to pick those particular ones.
Well, I wanted to pick timeless ones that weren't specific to an event. So they need to be timeless, and I wanted them to be, really what I felt were really good pieces of writing and were worth people's time. And I'm pretty judicious with my blog. I wouldn't publish a blog if it was no good. If I got to Thursday, Friday, and I had no decent idea, I probably on Sunday wouldn't publish a blog.
Have you ever got to that point?
No, I haven't actually, Ben. I write them over three sessions normally, and I have a good idea on the first session if it's going to be any good, and then on session 2 and session 3 it improves, and then it's worth reading. But for Takes On Life, I think the bar was set even higher, and I really wanted to write things. I didn't want anyone reading a single take and saying this is not worth my while. I often read journalism and I won't finish the article because I'm not sufficiently engaged either in their writing or their subject. And I wanted Takes not to be that book. I wanted it to be really engaging and people to find them very easy to read. And so I rewrote them many, many times. I didn't just knock it out in a weekend. It took me a long time, 6 months or so, to put it together.
No.
Yeah, and I hope that shows because, as I say, it's hard to get people to read books anyway. And so if you're going to ask someone to read your book, it's really, you've got to give them something which is difficult to put down. As you say, the screens, people are so distracted now. They're on Instagram watching little videos. These videos have been edited. They've got music, they've got lights. They're very compelling. Just to keep someone attracted to just a written word, you better be on your mark. I think anyway. And very often I'll read novels and put them down. I'll put the book down. That's not good enough. And I don't like doing that. I feel quite hollow by putting a book down. But I keep reading books that I'm told are wonderful, and I think that isn't great for me. I'm not sufficiently engaged.
I don't know if that's happened to me recently, but it's happened in the past. And
it's a bit of a moment when you put a book down. I think it's a bit of a defeat.
On
the writer's part, but also on my part, because sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm just not bright enough to get why this book is so lauded. I've read some books pretty heralded, and I've not got it at all.
No.
I'll go online to look at the reviews, and I think, how can that have all these garlands? How can it have that wonderful review when I don't get it? So I don't enjoy that defeat.
No.
I'd rather read a book that I love and I rip through and I want to tell my friends about it.
Well, I certainly think in the last 2 books you've done, I, Gabriel, and I'm floundering the name of it.
The Fruit Bowl.
Fruit Bowl.
The Fruit Bowl.
Both
Yeah.
of those do grab you. I think, and Fruit Bowl, it starts with quite a sort of upsetting kind of scenario, isn't it? I seem to recall. It's
Well, it's a true
kind of your worst nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a true story, and it's one of those stories. It's not a true story. It's a piece of fiction, but it's based on lots of things in my life that I've melded together. And I wanted to have a character who purports to have it all, and then have it ripped away from him. And I think that's a good, interesting start for a drama. And that was a true story. There was a man in London on the M25. His wife was in front of him in a Mercedes. He was driving a Land Rover. The Mercedes flipped, and the wife and his children perished. That was a true story on the motorway. And I'm driving along, listening to this, and I'm trying to compute how this man can recover. And ever since I heard that story, I always thought that would be a great place for a starting point of a drama. And then from that, I then I added on lots of different facets and elements of my life and my experience to create this story. So the Fruit Bowl, I am the guy who still makes the Fruit Bowl. So I'm the dad who gets up and I make this great big fruit concoction drink for my kids in the morning. I've done it for 10 years, 15 years. Yeah. And so that book was very personal to me. And I wanted to take the audience from crying about this beginning to crying about his crescendo, his recovery. And I managed that, because if you read the reviews for the Fruit Bowl, they're very heartrending. People are very touched by the book, and I love writing it, Ben. And I felt very privileged to tell the story. Gabriel as well. Gabriel, I don't think anyone around the world, I've even put a challenge out there with Gabriel. No one guessed the ending. No one has guessed the ending. It's confounded everyone. And I'm very pleased that happened, because as you read a book, if you read the physical book, your left and right hand are very important. And as your right hand gets less pages in it, you start to panic. You think, hang on, this book's nearly ending. How's he going to conclude this? Don't waste my time. And yet Gabriel, I think, concludes perfectly, but it's confounded everyone. Yeah. And I think it's very satisfying.
It's a year and a half since I read that book, so maybe longer actually. And I'm sort of slightly floundering, but I do know you left us with a kind of an element of us finishing off the life.
I left you in a point where I've given you now all the jigsaw puzzle pieces.
Exactly.
And if you want to, you can now create your own piece.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that was a nice one. I mean, I would say in both those books, they were incredibly very, very easy to read, very easy to get into, and there was no difficulty in as we've alluded to earlier on with.
Well, I think the key to my fiction is, I think a lot of fiction. I mean, I don't write literary fiction. I don't even know how I would categorize my fiction, but I think a lot of literary fiction is quite show-offy.
Contemporary fiction, I think you'd call yourself.
Okay, contemporary fiction. But I'm not interested in trying to impress people with my vocabulary and my command of English. Okay, there are writers that write beautiful prose, and that's enough of it in itself. Whereas I don't do that. What I write very simply, and I write very compelling stories that you want. The narrative is established, and you as the reader want to know how this resolves. And if I can make you smile along the way and occasionally laugh, then I'm doing my job. But I don't care about whether anyone reads my book and thinks, gosh, isn't Dominic Holland clever? Because that's not my job. My job is to entertain. As a stand-up comedian, I don't want any smiles. I want laughs out loud. I don't need an editor to protect me. Okay, I'll make the audience laugh. You stick them in the room, Ben. Give me a microphone and I'll make them laugh. When I write a book, I want to entertain. And that's my only remit. And I think a lot of authors are more concerned with how worthy they sound and how intelligent they are. And I'm neither. I'm not terribly intelligent and I'm not terribly worthy. I'm just an entertainer.
You're a storyteller as a comedian.
Yeah, I think so. Storyteller. Yeah, that's what I am. And so my books are pretty honest, I think.
This is your popularity within, your kind of audience, the sort of middle classes. You're the kind of you have a very good way of taking kind of normal middle class behaviors and enunciating it.
Yes, and I think that's a keen eye. I think you have to have a keen eye, and really my golden material on stage is when husbands and wives are prodding each other because they're going, he's talking about us, but it can't be obvious. I can't go on stage and say, God, isn't it funny how your hands get cold in the winter, but your knees don't? Because that's not funny, because everyone's already recognized that. You've got to be more oblique, you've got to be more subtle, and it's how you phrase it as well. You've got to choose lines and words that tease out the observation and then make people realize. Then they spot it and they go, oh my God, that's exactly what I do. And they're I call them nuggets, and they're not easy to find. But when you do find them, they're glorious, because you can. That's why I pause a lot in my stand-up. When I do stand-up, I always throw something out there for the audience, and then I can just pause and allow them to imagine it. So then when I tell them what they've already seen is coming, the laugh is higher, because they feel very included in my world and my live shows, which I haven't done for so long because of lockdown, which is why I've written 3 books in lockdown. So
yeah, no, you have. But I know I didn't allude to the fact at the start that we'd played golf yesterday, so we were having a chat over all sorts of stuff.
Let me just pause you there, Ben. I think you'll find that you play golf. I accompanied you, okay, because I had 1 par out of 18 holes.
You did. You wasn't a great round for you. Bless you.
Everything went wrong.
We played a sort of Sunningdale thing, and we were thrown together as a 4, and we had to choose our team. I was slightly worried at the start because, I mean, I'm probably the worst of the 4, and I was with Anthony, and he'd be honest to say he's probably the second worst of the 4. So suddenly the 2 worst players are pinned against you and Jimmy McGee, the great comedian, and so when the balls landed the way they did, I thought, oh dear, we're in trouble here. It was just as well you played a stinker. Well done.
Well, what it was Jimmy and I, stand-up comedians, you're a comedy promoter. Jimmy and I deliberately played badly in the hope that we might get some gigs at Tring over the next 5 years.
I can't believe that is ever the case, but that you would do that. But
no, I was trying my damnedest, but sometimes things go for you, Ben, and sometimes they go against you. And yesterday was certainly.
But without boring everyone with the golf stories, basically Anthony and I led the entire round until the last hole, where suddenly it was all square, and it was almost written in the stars that Dominic, the last putt of the whole thing, he had a putt to win
the match.
And win the match, and Dom, you stepped up, and sure enough,
that's when I definitely deliberately missed that putt. No, I wasn't. I was trying my damnedest, Ben, and as I do with everything, I try my hardest at bloody everything I do. Sometimes I can play glorious golf, and people think, bloody hell, Dom, you're a really good little golfer. And then yesterday, I can be ignominious. Is that the word? Ignominious, whatever the bloody word is.
Ignominious. But, right, let's talk about a few stories in here. Yeah. I always thought the discovery of the shoehorn was something that I'd made myself, and I was kind of, for me, it's in you get to a certain age in life, and suddenly the shoehorn is like a revolution. And I honestly adore a shoehorn, and I have to say I thought I was on my own here.
Ah, well, you see, now you've chanced upon then a good observation, Ben. I do take the mickey out of myself a lot in Takes On Life, and I do take the mickey out of Nikki quite a lot. You made a point yesterday about my wife, okay, and your point was that I am punching above my weight, okay, which is fine, okay. I've heard that an awful lot. People see me and my wife, and they look at me and they think, wow, he is either very funny or he's rich. Okay. And yeah, because she's much more attractive than I am. Okay. So I take the mickey out of myself. So I like a slipper. I do like a slipper. I do like my feet to be clothed in sheepskin. I do enjoy that. And I have bought these slippers that are too small. I was in a shop, they were too small, but I thought they'll stretch. They didn't stretch. So I basically have to prise them onto my feet. And I was in Marks and Spencer's one day, my favorite shop now. and I found this shoehorn, which is so long, it means you can use it without bending down. So one morning, having made my fruit bowl, I'm looking for my slippers because I'm cold, and I find these little slippers that are too small for me, and my wife has to suffer that word again, the
Ignominy.
The ignominy of seeing her husband putting on a pair of slippers, wearing his boxer shorts with a long shoehorn because he's too old to bend over.
And you're concerned that there's she may not find you attractive anymore because of this.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is that. I mean, although I can still make her laugh, and that is the main weapon with which I won her affections, which have waned, I'll be honest, over the years. But I think that's just marriage, to be honest. I think you just get to a point where but no, I can still make my wife laugh, and she does like a laugh, so that's quite important.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to meet Nikki, and yes, you are indeed shooting way. But I think it just feels like the right thing to say, because that's also complimentary to you.
Oh yes, it is. It's complimentary to us both. I mean, obviously Nikki likes to hear it. She doesn't tire of hearing it, and I'm quite proud, obviously, as well, because I mean, we're a good little couple. We seem to have there's a synergy to our loins. The kids are better than the parents, so
yes,
we're done well. No complaints, Ben.
How have you got a house full at the moment? How many of the family are around?
Oh, we have one child at home, Patrick, who is my least communicative. He is 16 and speaks to me about twice a year. The three elder boys are all absent, have gone, flown the nest. Sam's up in Glen Eagles. He's a trainee chef, which is great.
Okay.
He's the only one with a proper job in the Holland household. Tom is an actor, as many of you guys will know. He's back from America now. He is down time now because he's not working. He has some retakes to do, reshoots to do on films, but he has nothing now until January, so he's just around. And then Harry is making a short film, my other son. He is busy putting a short film together. And it's starring Lindsay Duncan, of all people. The actress, well-known actress, and she's been lovely to Harry. He's met her a few times, and she's going to be the lead in this short film, 15-minute film that he's paid for himself. He's put it together, and he makes it, I think, at the end of this month, 3 days.
Wow.
So he's written and directed this movie, and he's putting it together, and I think it's going to be really good. It's a really good little story. It's really concluded. I really like the way he's concluded, because a lot of short films are very inconclusive. His film has a beginning. It has a very obvious narrative and a great conclusion. So you as the audience, you're watching it, and you the storyteller, my son, gives you his answers, which I think is really good in 15 minutes. So he's busy doing that. So who knows, Ben? Maybe another book, Eclipsed 2. We don't know.
Yes, was Harry the one that came to Tring when we talked about I, Gabriel? You came to our...
Yes, Harry filmed I, Gabriel, correct. Yes, he did. He came to, because he does all the filming stuff. He's very good at editing. And yes, he did. He came to film that thing in the launch of your bookshop, in fact.
It was our bookshop launch, whatever it was, September 2019.
Yes. Before the COVID thing, before we even knew what COVID was.
Well, we've run our bookshop more in lockdown than we have in open time.
Of course you have, yes.
Yeah. So lockdown has become our norm in many ways.
It's great to see you without a mask.
But I say Tring, but we're the only independent bookshop for a significant distance. You go north, and I actually haven't worked out where the nearest indie is. I think it could be as far as Northampton or
remarkable. I think it's great what you did. I was worried for you, because obviously I thought with Amazon's omnipotence, I thought, gosh, Ben, you could really be taking a bath here. But I underestimated. Well, I shouldn't have underestimated, because I know when we do these roving comedy nights in your place, there's a great community in Tring. And when I've done the Court Theatre, a preview for Edinburgh stuff, I'm always very heartened that it's full. And I think it's a great little smashing place. And I'm heartened that they've responded to your shop. I really am. I really am heartened. I'd love to think Jeff.
Oops, he's frozen. You went briefly then.
Oh,
You're back. Yeah, I think I'm very lucky. Very lucky. I think. But you know what? I mean, you live in a lovely part of the world as well. So I mean, but if you're going to lock down, I think we've been very lucky.
I think where I live in West London, there's an independent bookshop, I'd say a couple of miles from me. And here's an interesting thing about being an author and a comedian. People often say to me, Dominic, you've got to go into your local bookshops, introduce yourself, and then stick your books in their shop and do a deal with them. But it leaves me cold. The idea of doing that leaves me cold. I mean, I've just finished writing a new novel, and I'd rather be busy doing that than running the risk of having a difficult exchange with a retailer. You know, I mean, even Waterstones in where I live in London, they have discretion to buy whatever books they like. So they could stock Dominic Holland's books. Being a local author, people know me. I get recognized in town. People say hello to me. But I still don't want to go into Waterstones. Hello, can I speak to your manager, please? I'm a local author. Would you be interested in stocking my books? I just don't want to do that.
It's yeah, I can understand that would be difficult. I mean, I'm lucky insofar as yes, I discover all the local authors around here. But
Yeah.
there's a difference between being a local author and being an author who lives locally. You know, I think there is a, and it's.
Sorry, what do you mean? Say that again.
There's a difference between being a local author and an author who lives locally. The fact that in my mind, there's a big difference between the two. It may seem very confusing to you, but the fact is, there's lots of people who can claim to be authors who live locally,
right?
Whose output is not as impressive as somebody, a professional author who is churning out. Now, I think in your case, because you sit between and betwixt, because you keep self-publishing, which is something I ideally think you should try to, and I know you're doing something about this. You know, by being with a publisher, by being with an agent, which I know you've got a meeting with one, it just gives that extra level of credibility.
Oh no, Ben, listen, I don't think extra level. It gives you entire credibility, because even though the Fruit Bowl and Gabriel, I think, stack up with the books that are selling, we see in the book.
Without doubt.
Oh, thank you. But I think they stack up. But they, as an independent published book, they are never going to have that same credibility, because people assume that book was rejected or you have been rejected. Now, I was published back in the day when I was a famous comedian, appearing on telly, and I was a pretty well-known stand-up comedian, and I was bought as a celebrity author, but I was sacked by my publisher after my first novel because I didn't sell enough units. And there is a phrase in publishing that it's easier to get published than remain published, because once you're published, you are then subject to your numbers. And if the numbers for your sales are against you, then you are dispensed with, and then you're soiled. And it's very difficult to get back in. Now, I haven't tried to publish a book for the last 3 or 4 books I haven't tried. Gabriel, the Fruit Bowl, I didn't try. Open Links, I didn't try. I will try, I think, with this new one. Okay, because it's a sequel to Only in America, which is my first novel. It's not really a sequel in story, but it's the same characters reprised 20 years later. So I am intending to give it a go. Although I say, without being mawkish or maudlin, I'm expecting to be turned away because of my age and my demographics. I'm not the person they want to be taking on. So I'm expecting to be turned down, but I think I should give myself a chance again, at least. And then I'll know at least. And then I'll continue doing the independent route and hope for an E.L. James, because there are authors, independent authors, who do sell buckets of books. And I just think that's sheer determination, and I'm not very salesy.
I mean, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I certainly know. I mean, in my case, around here we have one particularly well-known historian called Roger. Weirdly, same surname as me, Roger Moorhouse.
All right.
But he is, he's an incredibly credible, very credible historian, does his own research, and he writes some extraordinarily brilliant books
Yeah.
that touch on subjects that haven't been written enough about.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of championed the whole World War II, the experience from Poland's perspective. And
Okay, they were so brave, the Poles, weren't they? And we don't see the losses that the Poles endured.
oh no, I mean Poland is where it all started. And,
yes.
So he's
the fortitude of the Poles is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean there was I mean we digress slightly, but there was a pact between Russia and Germany. They signed basically it was a map of Poland and showing how they would divide it up.
Yes,
and it's a famous map that now sits in some museum in Germany, I think it is. And the Russians are very unhappy at the idea of this thing being in existence because it was a dark period for them,
Yeah, and Poland was so resilient and so, as I say, determined to prevail, and they fought like dervishes, and we don't think of that really.
No, and honestly, we still digress slightly, but it's because it's a subject I'm actually quite passionate about as well as a result. But when you look at the fighter pilots for the RAF,
they're all Polish.
You look at the stats, and there's all the pilots, and how many hits and then you've got the Polish pilots, who were fearless, and because their hatred was that much more, their guile and their willingness to take risks and their so they it's an extraordinary thing. But who'd have thought we'd get talking about?
So this chap Roger, then he is a professional published author, is he, or is he local?
Professional published author? You'll see, and so he's also a great door for me as a bookshop owner to get interviewed. So, for instance, Jonathan Dimbleby has just published a book called Barbarossa,
right,
which is all about Germany's attempt to beat the Russians, and that his Roger's previous book follows perfectly into Barbarossa because it was all,
okay.
And I wanted an interview with Jonathan Dimbleby, so I sort of went to the publisher and said, look, and Roger Moorhouse is willing to interview him. And the moment he found that out, he said instantly yes. So Jonathan only did, I think, 3 interviews to publicize his book. One with the New Statesman, another one with another big glossy festival or something, and then the third one with our bookshop in Tring.
Brilliant. Well, that's great. And if you can leverage Roger, it's good all round for you all. It's good all round. And I would love to be able to do the problem of being an independent publisher is I could go. Back in the day, I'd go to Hay on Wye. They'd put me in a tent with 500 people. I would rock the tent for 45 minutes with stand up, and then I would do a Q&A or a book signing.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic for the Hay Festival because you'd have all these people who aren't terribly good at speaking and quite learned people, quite dry. And then you have someone like me who can rock the room, but they will not take you now as an independent published book. So I can say to Hay, hey, listen, I can come and do an hour for you, an hour of stand up. I've got a new novel. They will not take you if you are not published. So it's a folly, really.
Exactly.
And it's an even longer shot if you're not published.
Yeah. So I'm in the process because we are planning a November book festival, and so I'm in the process of talking to publishers, and I won't talk to authors direct in general. Whilst I get lots of emails from people, I need the gatekeepers in the publishing world to have ratified and looked at and read and decided what's good and what isn't. And that's what publishers do,
So okay, so they're gatekeepers for you. So they are a filter, if you like. So are you getting emails from independent publishers then, or from authors who are officially published?
Yeah, I mean the bookshop gets emails from all the time from people, and it's, I mean, keep in mind I've got millions of emails that I end up not reading just because I get so many emails from publishers.
That's interesting to me because it would not occur to me for a second to do that. I always think my work will be found if it's of merit.
But you sit right between. You're in a tricky situation of being you are a celebrity, sort of.
Well,
you're also a brilliant writer, but and for one reason or another, you've published, self-published, and so it's. I think you're in a very tricky position.
Yeah, invidious is a way to describe it. But the fruit bowl, for example, that euphoric ending. My hope, Ben, is that a reader in Buenos Aires will read the fruit bowl and have to tell their friend and their mother and their brother, "Hey, you got to read this book." Now, that's the holy grail of publishing. So David Nichols can do that. I've read a few David Nichols books. I played golf with a mate of mine who's a very good golfer. He said to me, "My Sally read this book and she gave it to me. She goes, you got to read it." And he goes, "And you've got to read it, Dom." And that was the book Once that David Nichols wrote. And I read Once and didn't like it. But that doesn't negate the impact of that book, because Matt and Sally both loved that book. And Matt felt inclined to tell me about it because his wife had given it to him. He'd read it and he wanted to tell me about it. Now, I've not managed to do that.
Well, I'm a huge fan of David Nichols. I think, and I would actually, in complimenting you, I would say you are, you're every bit as good as David Nichols. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Sweet Sorrow is just an extraordinary book, and was one of our books of the month.
Well, good. I mean, and he's David. I've never met David, but often on Twitter, I've seen things on Twitter saying, "I've read all of Dominic Holland's and David Nichols' book. Who else writes books like them?" So I have been compared to David. But what I'm saying is he is able to have this extraordinary word of mouth. Now, I don't think that's the publisher's skill. I think that's his skill.
But he's starting from a broader base, isn't he? You're in getting properly published by a proper publisher. He's blitzed the whole country. So it's a very different kettle of fish from.
And which is why, Ben, having written this new novel, I am going to try. Okay, so the meeting was supposed to be tomorrow. It's actually been postponed until next Friday now. So it gives me a bit more time to work on the first 3 chapters. They want the first 3 chapters and a synopsis. I've got the manuscript, which is going to be edited by a mate of mine. So, look, we'll see. And I'm happy to go through the hoop again. We'll see. If I emerge, then fantastic. But I'm not kind of expecting to, because of it's all about being young and new and different. And I'm neither. I'm none of those.
So, yeah, well, in the end, what the author, I mean, I have to say, I would say the author's age and everything is surely that's meaningless. I don't.
Yeah, no, I think it should be, but if you offered a publisher a sexy 29-year-old or a 55-year-old, 60-year-old, they are going to go all day long with the 29-year-old all day long, and a sexy looking writer, as opposed to an ordinary looking writer, they're going with a sexy looking writer. If a female author is really attractive, guess what? They're going to be a big picture on the back of that book.
That's I don't know. I'm not convinced, actually.
Well, I'm telling you, mate. I'm telling you that look, I'm quite excited at the prospect of it. The good thing about the internet, as liberating as it is you can circumvent all of these no's and objections. But the downside is it is so vast. You better be noisy and loud. You better be tweeting every 15 minutes and putting the content on and doing videos. And I just don't have that not just the wherewithal. I don't have the inclination.
Well, look, you've got 80, 90,000 followers on Twitter. That's a hell of a base to start from. Now, if you take someone on to handle your social.
Oh, I do. I have this. I have a nice lady who lives not far from you. She's a lovely lady and she does great work. But I'm not excited at the prospect of I must create content every day for this book. So me reading 2 minutes of the book, or I just, you know what, Ben? You know what, mate? I'm only going to be here for another 40 years, hopefully, and I want to enjoy them.
Creating content isn't a way of enjoying it.
Well, look, it might be a complete folly because for me personally, maybe other authors are very much quicker than me, but for me, with my rather agricultural education, it takes me a long time to write a book. Those takes on life that you've just read, they seem very easy to read and they seem easy to write. They're not. They took me a long time. And my novels take me a long time to read. So to spend so much time writing them and then no time at all selling them seems a folly. Yeah. but it's something I'm afraid to break out of. I'm not a showy person. I like people to find my work and enjoy it or not. I'm not going to be the guy shouting from the rooftop, "Hey, come and buy my book." You know, whenever I've done gigs, I'm always pretty reticent about saying, "Look, I brought my book with me."
Yeah.
Remember, I've been in the dressing room with you after gigs where I've done a really strong set, and I'm reluctant to go out to the bar to sign books because I'm panicking that no one's going to be buying them.
Yeah. And yet, for me, opening a bookshop and also running a comedy club, it just feels like the two most complementary things in the world.
Yeah. No,
so I need to insist on only booking great comedians who've written books, and so I can also help the bookshop and sell a load of books as well. Which is,
yeah, no, Ben, and I when the new novel is published, because it will be published, then I'd love to come to Tring and we could do a stand-up show. And that one, the one in the church was really agreeable. I did a little bit of stand-up, a little bit of
great. That was great, and that was actually the first time we'd used that venue. That venue is now our staple kind of book venue,
and it's a good venue.
It's a great venue, and we've done virtual streams from there as well. So it's a great one. But a very random question from one of the audience: what's your favourite cheese? Is that reference to something I don't know about?
I don't know. I don't know what the reference is. I would say halloumi. I like. I'm conscious of halloumi being, hastening the end of your life. So I've got to take that in small doses. But I tell you what, I had a lot recently. I had a brie from the Cotswolds. I'm massively into British produce and products and stuff. And if I see a brie that's or any cheese that's from Britain, I tend to just give it a go. And I was at a fishmonger's in the local market who I always support. I go and see my fishmonger, buy my fish, and he had some local bries, and they were from, I can't remember the name of the cheese, but it was absolutely delicious. It was a British brie, English brie. So there you go.
I really didn't think you'd have even a minute or two of cheese-based material, and the same, and they're very carefully adding the question as anonymous attendee, so I can't tell who is from the people watching it is. They've now added, what's your favourite? Oh, is it mackerel or cod? Now this is, I'm reckoning this might be Kim actually who's asking these questions.
I'll tell you what, in terms of mackerel, let me tell you, mackerel, we all think of mackerel as being smoked and cut and put into a cellophane. We get them in the, tell you what, the best thing to do with mackerel, right? Buy a complete mackerel, right? Gutted, a bit of salt, roast it 25 minutes. Delicious, absolutely. and it tastes good for you, the oil.
Good. I didn't think we'd get into culinary things at all. So what's Dominic Holland's lockdown been like? I mean, obviously no gigs. So how have you earned any money?
Well, it's been very productive, actually, Ben. I've written this new novel. I've written Takes On Life. I published The Fruit Bowl. I've recorded Eclipse as an audio book, and it's going to be read by Dominic Holland in conversation with Tom Holland. So the idea is that I've read the book. It's now being edited now, and then Tom and I are going to go into the studio at some point in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to reminisce on the anecdotes that I've told in the book. So it's going to be a really nice audio book. It's taken a lot of time, spent a couple of grand doing it. So I've done that. So that's been very productive. And I also have started a Patreon site, which I didn't know, I hadn't heard of, but a friend of mine put me onto it. And it's basically a content site for subscription, and people pay a little bit each month, $2, $3, $5, and then they get to interact with me. So I make videos for them. I put up a lot of blogs that I'd never published elsewhere, and I've written the new novel I've written, I actually wrote on Patreon. So I've published it already on that site. So the subscribers can read and it's been great for them because they see how often they have to rewrite, and they've seen the story become polished, and they've seen the story emerge, and they've been confounded by where it's going. So it's been very heartening to see. So I've done that.
I've just posted the Patreon address on the chat for the live audience. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, you won't get the push. Tell you what I'll do. I'll put it in the text of the YouTube video as well.
It's been good fun. It's been a lot of work, but when people are paying, how I rationalize it, the bbc.co.uk, mailonline.co.com, wherever they are. These are free websites. You think of all that content. I know they're full of adverts and stuff, but they are free. So I think when you are having people pay $2 a month or $3 a month, I feel very responsible for then. I mean, obviously they can just leave. There's no pressure to stay. There's no time. You can join and you leave when you leave. But I do think, gosh, $2, over 12 months, $25, you better be producing some content. So I've quite enjoyed that need. I've quite enjoyed that need to keep your patrons with you.
So you've got enough of them to provide you an income for a living?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I haven't changed my car. But yes, no, I have created an income without leaving the house, but I am pretty desperate to leave the house again. I like the idea of doing gigs, Ben. I like having thoughts and being able to air them.
Yeah.
I write these blogs, and the blogs are very well received. I get very big readerships now every week. But there's nothing better than going on stage, grabbing that mic. They all go quiet. They're all expectant, and then you've got to deliver. And I said to you just the other day, there are people on TV who go on stage, go on TV shows. They are useless. And then the editors sit around and say, right, we need to make this person look funny. We need to put a laugh track on. We need to have false cutaways. We need to support this act. Well, that can't happen in live stand-up. Live stand-up is a beautiful thing because you are either funny or you are embarrassing. And I quite like that rigor because I've done stuff, we all do stuff that doesn't work. And there's nothing quite like that feeling of vulnerability. You put something out there as funny and they will let you know immediately whether it's funny or not. Mm-hmm. So I love that and I miss that. And I'm excited at the prospect of getting out there again.
Well, I've literally just announced our first gig. So we've got Henning appearing shortly before lockdown ends, actually, on the 12th of June. Good. And we were told our capacity was 80 for the venue, for theatre. However, I've had an email just about an hour ago saying it's actually 112. So it's gradually increasing, and maybe. So I'm going to put both those because he's doing a matinee and an evening. I'm going to put them both on sale. For me, that's really a toe in the water to see how.
Is he a big favourite in Tring?
I think he's one of a raft of people, very popular. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He's had a load of telly recently, so Henning, it's great that Henning can fill that room for you, and he'll do a great show.
Yeah. Have you got someone distracting you?
I had someone come in then, yes, and it was my most illustrious son,
Patrick.
No, it wasn't Patrick. It was the eldest.
Brilliant. Tell him to come and say hello. I'd love to.
He's now gone.
Has he? All right. You said about, I tell you what, you said about Glen Eagles, Sam. That sounds amazing. Can he get us around at golf at some point?
You know what, Ben? If we want to schlep up there, mate, we can play golf dirt cheap. It is a beautiful place. I've done gigs at Glen Eagles. I've done about 3 dinners over the years. And whenever I've done a gig at Glen Eagles, it's always been, oh my God, I'm at Glen Eagles, because it's such a beautiful place. It's a stunningly lovely building. It's very historic. It's all stone floors and open fires and it smells of whiskey and peat. And it's just a fantastic place. I love Edinburgh. I love being in Scotland. And Sam's working really hard. And I love that. He's 22. He's calling up. He's working from 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning till about 11 at night, 12-hour shift. He says to me sometimes at the end of the shift, he's not even eaten. He said, it's so rushed in the kitchen. And I said to Sam, that's the steepest learning curve in the world, mate. And it's going to get shallower and you're going to get better and you're going to get stronger. So I said, look, mate, I'm really proud of you. And he said, I'm sticking it out, Dad. And he's tough. And I love him for it.
Unlike the rest of his brothers, he's doing a proper job, isn't he?
A proper job.
Well done to him.
He's doing
Mark Giles, and I have to apologise, Mark, because you just reminded me, I didn't get Dom to personalise your book, but we can do that another time. I know I'm going to be seeing Dom next month, but Mark has asked a question, a very sensible question, clearly pulling us into line here. Do you write for set hours each day? Are you quite a disciplined writer?
Great question, Mark. I'll tell you what it is for me. I need to have threads. Okay. So in a novel, I've got maybe 7 or 8 threads. I've got a main thread and lots of ancillary threads. And unless I write every day, and I mean every single day, you lose all those threads. And so then you have to start again. I haven't got the recall or the memory or the ability or the intelligence to keep the threads alive. So I've got to write every single day. Otherwise, the book is not consistent. So when I tend to write, I don't write for a set time, but I tend to write every day, and I write decent stuff. So I don't just sit there and put a couple of hours in of rubbish. It's got to be decent stuff. And then I then feel that the book is consistent. The threads are converging, but I have a very arduous or onerous editing process, which is basically I have to restart the book many, many times. And as I go through each time, the analogy I use is like ironing a dry sheet. And it comes out of the dryer and it's all buckled, and you've got to put the iron on it, and you put the linen on and spray it and iron and keep ironing it. And that's how I see my books. That's why they're easy to read, because they've been so many times ironed by me.
Do you accept an editor to come in and read your books after you've written them, or is Nikki your editor?
Well, the book I've written at the moment, apart from the guys on Patreon, I would love to have an editor, Ben. I've got a very pretty illustrious friend who's a famous journalist and very successful lady, and she's a huge fan of my writing. We've just become friendly in lockdown. She's been really encouraging. She read my books. She read The Fruit Bowl first, then she read Aya Gabriel. She's read Open Links, and
Do you want to say who this is?
No, you probably wouldn't want me to say, but she's famous and she's a huge fan. And she said to me, Dominic, you should be published, a bit like what you've said, you should be published. And she said, well, given that my books have been not edited at all, they're just my own efforts. She said they are remarkable, given that you haven't got an agent, an editor, a copy editor.
Mm.
So all these, when you go through a publisher, they go through all these sort of these filters, if you like, and each filter is adding and augmenting and changing and adapting, and I don't have that.
The thing is, you're such an opinionated character that editing. If an editor turns to you and says, "Write that chapter," you don't need it.
I would find that liberating, because I think you can't see things yourself, and I mean, I have a very good instinct with my stand-up, because if anything doesn't work, I lose it. I mean, the audience tell me it's not strong enough. I have a very high bar in stand-up. People have to laugh out loud. I don't do any smiles. I'm not a smile comedian. I'm tired of seeing smile comedians on TV. I'm a laugh out loud comedian. But with my fiction, I don't profess to be an expert in fiction, Ben. I am a man who failed English language O-level at school. So I'm a kind of self-taught writer. And I think I would embrace someone more learned than me, English-wise, helping me. But I don't have that, and I can't afford. Well, I don't know how to find an editor online or someone I trust. But when you're with a publisher, then they have all these people in place, and their job is to make the book better. So I think that's a great advantage, and that's why this friend of mine is the lady who's brokering this deal with the agent, me to meet the agent, because she said, look, there's no way you should be not published. And she's been really kind. And I've only met her a couple of times because it's been a lockdown. So a lot of Zoom meetings with her. And she found my books and read them and got in touch.
So, but they, I mean, I've said this before. You're a Nick Hornby or a David Nichols. It's they're that good. And
that's really kind of you, Ben. And I love the fact that people would say that. I mean, I have read Nick Hornby and David Nichols. John O'Farrell's another author I've been compared to, and all of my books, Takes On Life, even, I just want them to be readable and people want to share them. And I do enjoy writing them.
You went hardback for this one. Was there a reason?
Yeah, because I wanted it to be the sort of book that you didn't want to give away. I wanted it to be a book that was very attractive to hold and keep, and you might revisit it. And I wanted it to be, in my little mind, it was, people would say, you've got to get this book. It's so funny, it's so enjoyable. And here's the website link, or here, get it on Amazon. Yeah. And that's why I justified. I mean, I think there are 10 online, maybe 15 quid when I first published it. And I think you're going to knock them out for a tenner, but I want them to be books that people wanted to keep. And I thought if I made it hardback, because they're quite attractive, aren't they? They've got that sort of waxy.
They're lovely. And we've got 10 signed ones in the shop. So, which is lovely.
That should last a year.
Well, we've obviously still got a few I Gabriel left as well as, but
Okay.
I would thoroughly recommend them. I'm conscious how quickly this hour has gone. It's just like it's ridiculously quick. So
And in terms of stock, you needn't worry about stock. My garage, you can't open the door, mate.
No, we won't. But no, we'll catch up. We'll catch up next month, and I'll get another 10.
I will come to Tring when we're allowed to, Ben, and meet the people who've been kind enough to give up an hour tonight. I hope they've enjoyed listening to us prattle on about Polish fighter pilots and cheese.
Well, the same questioner then piped up one more time, which I was trying to avoid actually. We're asking for cake recommendations, which is
cake. Well, I'm not a big cake eater at my age. I'm very conscious of becoming a little fat bald man.
That didn't show last night after golf, I have to tell you. Well,
I was so miserable, disconsolate, and upset. I felt I needed to sate myself with some calories. But no, I tend to. I'm a big apple crumble fan, and my mum, bless her, who's now on her own. Dad went just before lockdown, year before lockdown. She's a brilliant cook, and she makes a fantastic fruitcake. Fantastic, knock your socks off fruitcake. So that's where I go for cake. I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't do coffee cake. That offends me. Coffee outside anything other than a drink offends me. Coffee, chocolate.
I have a problem with carrot cake. I just think
carrot cake. Why? No need to do carrot cake.
No.
None at all, ever.
Mina and Richard have piped up asking with custard or without. I did.
These are people who stumbled in, aren't they? I like custard. I'm very partial to carnation, which is very old-fashioned. Not very fashionable, but I like carnation. It's a sort of condensed milk, very calorific, very sweet, delicious. Apple crumble and carnation, happy days.
Indeed. Listen, Dominic, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I didn't even look at my notes to see if there's any questions I should have asked you. Yeah.
I'm not surprised the hour went quickly, Ben. Although, do you have anyone left in your audience?
Yeah, no, they're all here. And I was going to show you the scorecard from yesterday.
Oh, no.
It was the first thing Anthony, when I got home, I got a text from Anthony wanting the scorecard because I obviously kept his score as well. And he and I just thought I'd rub it in your nose. Actually, it's rare that I'm ever going to beat you at golf. I suspect.
Well, the next time I go out, Ben, will be without you, and I'll be awesome, and you won't believe me.
I know that Tom was playing yesterday, wasn't he? How did he get on?
He had a shocker as well. He was playing with a friend of ours who's a pro, and his dad who's off 4, and Harry, his brother. So there was the Hollands versus the Baileys. The Hollands were trounced by the Baileys, who live up your way. In fact, they live in Rickmansworth Way, and Scott is a young pro, and but they're good mates. Tom and he are good mates, and Tom loves his golf, and he's a good little golfer, but he isn't at the point yet where it's all consistent. It's a hard game, right? It's a small ball, a long distance. A lot can go wrong. A lot of wind, mud, rain, pain. It's a hard game.
Well, and I think you've done well getting them all into golf, though. I think you've done an admirable job as a father.
I think the reason why I did that though is because I some of my regrets in life. I don't have too many regrets in life, but I didn't get good at a sport young. And I think for a bloke, especially for a bloke, to be really good at a sport is a really different adulthood, because you can rock up at the squash club. If you're a good squash player, you're in the team, you're the guy. If you're a good tennis player, if you're a good badminton player, if you're a good golfer, and I think that's a very different. If you're a hacker and you're really pretty agricultural, I think that's it's okay. You can still enjoy your game, but you're much better off if you've put a few hours in as a kid and you learn things as a kid that become indelible. You know, and I've sort of used a lot of my failings in my life to use for my fatherhood. So, you know, and as I say in Eclipse, the nonfiction book I wrote, my greatest success in life has been in parenting and not in comedy. And if you'd offered me that when I started out as a stand-up, I would definitely have taken that. I'd rather have been a good dad than a brilliant comedian filling arenas, but with really feckless family life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would choose where I am, Ben. And so there's no, I'm sort of taking the mickey out of these naff comedians who are getting all the TV gigs. That sounds pretty rancorous, but it's not really. I'm fine. I'm conscious of how lucky I am. And I love seeing the boys prevail. I mean, Tom's Tom, who knew? You know what I mean? Harry's going to make movies. Little Paddy is the youngest one. He's done a big Netflix show last year, and he's just going to do another one this summer.
He's going to be an actor as well.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be an actor, but he certainly is. He has that presence that Tom can bring to a screen, and he's very convincing. So, and because of who his brothers are, casting directors come to him and ask him to go on tape. And he's, as I say, he's made a TV show already, which comes out. I don't know when it comes out, but it comes out in the next period. And then he's going to make another one this summer. So he has a great summer making a film or a TV show. So I love seeing that, Ben. It's brilliant.
No, I think you've got life in perspective. I think it's probably the outtake from that. Right, listen, we've got to bring this to an end. We've done our hour. So Dominic Holland's Takes on Life Vol.1. So there'll be a Volume 2 at some point, I suspect. And who knows, maybe published by HarperCollins or
who knows. Well, we'll see. I'm going to go through the hoop. I'll let you know if I emerge.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. You deserve it, absolutely. And it's funny. And it's also thought-provoking. It's not, because not every story is funny. It's
no, they're not funny. They're either funny, comic, or they are, as I say, poignant.
I have to say, I laughed out loud at a number of them. I think the Alexander McQueen story, hilarious.
I came home and told Nikki the story, and she was in hysterics when I told her the story.
Your take on swimming is beautiful. The shoehorn bit. I'm just looking at the notes I wrote on the top. And your final one about having a ladies' golf club. I didn't notice that yesterday, I have to say. Your driver is a ladies' driver, which, take that as it is.
They are embellished.
Anything that can help your game is a good thing.
I do embellish them, but they are all rooted in my rather unusual life. There's a character in my first novel called Johnson Clark, who's a black guy, a cool black guy, and he's now in the new novel as well. And his flounderings are mine. So I because things happen to me which are peculiar, and I have this. It's not a deliberate thing. They just occur to me, and they're worth chronicling because they're comic.
Yeah.
And then I can write them funny. I can embellish, and I can use the right language for people to read them and enjoy them. So I hope people enjoy Takes on Life. Thank you to your audience, Ben. It's kind of you to organise this for me, mate. This is the only one I've done for Takes on Life, so I wish I'd done it.
It's the only interview I've done this week, actually. So it's been a very easy week for me, knowing that I only had to consume one little book, and it was such an easy read as well. So
good.
Apart from thrashing you at golf, it's probably why I played golf so well yesterday. It showed.
Easy read, difficult write. How's that?
Okay. Listen, thank you so much, audience, for joining us. Dominic, thank you again. I'm sure we're going to be seeing you probably sometime in June, aren't we?
I hope so, Ben. You're a good man. Bless you all.
Cheers, guys. Look after yourselves.
Take it easy. Thanks, Ben.
Bye.